Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lenton, and this is episode 24. Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast. Today's guest is an ambassador for Sony cameras. She's a speaker and an educator for Profoto. She's won numerous awards for her business, and she can be found strutting around on the stages at live shows, doing demonstrations. It's Hannah Couzens. Hello, Hannah.
Hi, Joe. That's a fun intro. Thanks for having me.
So you are someone that we often see at the trade shows. In fact, you've just come back from one relatively recently. Do you enjoy being on stage like that, or is it a bit scary?
No, I love it. It's so much fun. It's kind of, I totally get that for some people, it's their worst nightmare, the idea of being on stage and speaking in front of people. But I don't know. It's one of those things that I never really realised I could do. But then as I started to do it, it just felt really natural. I think the thing is I don't overhype it. Right. I just kind of like keep it for what it is. So basically, if there's one person or 100 or 1,000 in the audience, I'm not any different. And I just try and talk to people individually and talk to them as if I'm talking to somebody in a room, just without all the lights and everything else on you. It's just I try to keep it as relaxed as possible, like I'm talking to people as if I would do if I was sitting on a sofa having a conversation with them. That's my technique anyway.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I used to play in bands years ago, and when you're in a sort of a dark room with the lighting on the stage, you can't see past the first few rows anyway. So
right, yeah.
It made no difference how many people were in the back of the room.
Right, good point.
So what is it then that you think you enjoy about teaching?
I think for me, teaching was one of those things that I really sort of fell into, actually. But I really enjoy the process of knowledge sharing because I guess when I was learning, I learned from books because it was all the way back in the sort of late 90s. And the internet wasn't a thing. YouTube wasn't a thing. Certainly, definitely no YouTube that was up and running and accessible for everybody. And certainly no platforms that were dedicated to education. None of that existed. And now I think I remember how hard it was for me to try to carve my way through to figure out, to get to the learning and the actual bit that I wanted that really interested me. And so for me now, I love being able to have platforms where I can share my knowledge in the hope that it helps people, especially if they're just getting started. Or I think the thing is with lighting and with flash in particular is that it can be very overcomplicated. People can make it so much more complicated than it actually is. And I feel like most things with teaching, it's just having the ability to translate jargon into the simple black and white form as to what is going to happen if you do this, what's going to happen if you do that, and what that means for your photos. So you can decide what it is that you want to create, and therefore I can hopefully try and get you the tools of how you get there, basically.
Yeah, you don't want to sound like you've swallowed a science textbook if you're giving a talk on lighting, do you?
100%. And the thing is, Joe, so many people do, and I don't know what it is. And I guess over my years in the industry, I have come across people that always want to sort of maybe be the gatekeepers and keep some information back. And I really don't understand that mentality because everything's been done at least once before. You're not the first person to do it. So surely the more we all help and share tips and knowledge, the better overall everyone's photography is going to be. And in general, the whole thing gets raised in terms of quality and, being able to deliver. So I just don't, I've never understood that. It's bizarre to me.
No, and there's a risk as well, I think, that photography is a trade effectively, so that knowledge gets lost if we don't pass these things on. You don't want people to have to start from scratch every time. You think, look, we've already got to a certain point. Let's build from here. Let's share it with people. They're not just going to take your job because you told them how to put a flash up.
100%. I completely agree with that. Because the thing is, ultimately, all of us, and this is something that fascinates me, is that even when we're in a workshop environment, so I'm running a workshop, we've got the same model, we're in the same room, perhaps I've set the light up to sort of show people where to put it. Everybody then will line up and take their own shot and direct the model, etc. And what is fascinating is how different, let's say there's 6 people in the room, how different those images are, even though the light's in the same place, the model's the same, and nothing has moved. And that just shows you that everybody, each individual person, is going to create something different and get a different result each time, even with the exact same setup. So I think, exactly what you just said, there's no point in the sort of, keeping stuff back, because no matter what, everything's going to be different depending on who has the camera in their hands in the first place.
Yeah, and we need to be able to evolve as an industry. The world is changing around us, and we need to be able to keep up. We need to be able to produce top quality images, not just what we were able to do 20 years ago with old tech.
100%. Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And there will be sort of, I think naturally what happens as the tech evolves, there will be some things that you will pick up easier than others. And there's definitely some aspects to it where you might not think that you're so interested in learning it. But ultimately, as you say, if we don't, we're probably going to be left behind. So we've got to give it a go at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So for those that don't know you're mainly doing portraits and headshots is what you're known for. So I wonder then, what sort of strengths and qualities do you think you need to draw on the most for your work in those genres?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I didn't originally start by just doing portraits, although that was kind of always something that I gravitated towards. I have shot a mixture of things during my time, but ultimately portraits was my thing in the end. And the thing that really, I guess, drew me to it was just the interest that I have in people in general. I'm quite a sociable person. I find people interesting. And what I love about my job is I don't know who's going to walk through the door next. And I have met all kinds of people, and it's so nice to meet people and learn from them. And I love that part of my job. It's brilliant. But what that really involves when it comes down to picture taking and getting the best out of people is that it heavily relies on your interest in them as well. You've got to be somebody that is a people person, and even if you don't think that you're a people person, you don't have to be all sort of bubbly. And I'm sort of twofold really, because I'm not sort of the first one at a party by any means, but I guess the interactions that I do have with people, I like to be interesting and have some depth to them. So rather than sort of being in a room full of people and not really just getting to know anybody, I'd rather have less people there and get to know them properly. And I guess that comes through with work. So I would say that, especially if someone's sort of wondering whether they would be able to do portraiture, it's just a case of taking an interest in that person and having empathy, because a lot of the work that I do, this might sound a bit strange, but a lot of the work that I do might be that people have been told that they have to have a picture taken, and they might not necessarily have rolled out of the bed that day and gone, I'm going to book myself a portrait session. Because
I don't know many that do.
I was going to say, in reality, how many people actually do that? Not many.
No.
So it's very often that people have been, or they might even be there under duress. They might be that they really hate having their picture taken, but they've got an article coming out and they've got to have this press release, and someone from their PR team has asked them for a headshot and they really don't want to have it done, etc. So you've got to have a lot of empathy to sort of sympathise with this person and just kind of be like, okay, and reassurance. So I generally sort of say to them, look, I totally understand the situation you're in. It's nerve-wracking being the other side of the camera, but it's my job to get you a good picture today. All of that pressure and everything that you feel, give that to me. You haven't got to do anything. Between us, we're going to work together and we're going to get you a picture that you're going to be happy with and you're more than happy with to have broadcast out to the world. And that's just a case of sort of looking at things from somebody else's perspective and sort of thinking, how are they actually feeling about this? Take the pressure off of them, calm everything down, relax the atmosphere, talk to them, guide them, encourage them, and that's how you're going to get the best out of somebody, is to put yourself in their shoes for a minute and let them know that you feel that way, and that they're not just coming in and feeling like they're completely out of their depth, and you're expecting them to know what to do and how to pose and where to put their hands and all of that. If you take that away from somebody and just let them know that it's not on them, and between you'll get it done, suddenly you see there's a huge dramatic difference in how somebody behaves, in their body language and everything.
So there's empathy is quite important there, and that sort of connection. If we get too caught up in positioning lights here, there and everywhere and don't concentrate enough on the person, you're not going to get them to relax into the situation, are you?
100%. I mean, it's quite interesting because I've recently done some training with somebody, and we were doing all of the technical and, kind of putting lights in the right place and all of that. And then I set up a couple of scenarios where I was like, okay, right, now you know what to do. Now I'm going to be here, but you can set the lights up, and now you can go ahead and talk and communicate with the model, tell her what you want, based on where you've put the light, etc., and where she needs to move or he needs to move. And suddenly he was like, this is hard, Hannah. He's like, you make it look so easy. Is it because I freeze up? I don't know what to say. And I'm kind of like, I've forgotten the communication bit. And I mostly say to people, especially with portraiture, if you need to almost learn your craft and know your lighting, or have a plan, know how you're going to pose. I'm not saying you have to have the whole shoot mapped out, but if you've certainly got a couple of things in your head that you're going to think that you're going to do, if you can get to the stage where you can do it like breathing, then it means that all your focus can then be on the person in front of you. And I heard somebody once say that you can always tell how good a portrait photographer is based on the expression of the sitter. And that's so true, because if somebody is feeling a little bit out there and a bit exposed and a bit kind of, I don't know what to do, it'll be written all over their face. If somebody feels relaxed and comfortable and, like they're having a good time or whatever it is, that's a reflection of the person holding the camera. And it's very true. It's a lot to think about. And this is definitely a hurdle for people when they first start, because they think, how hard can it be? And then they kind of, they get the setup and they get the person in place. And then before they know it, they've wound themselves up into a hot mess, because they're kind of, they're dealing with the light, and then they're not communicating with the model, and then everything just kind of goes out the window. So I think the more you can try and secure a few things that that you want to do, and try and get them down, practice, then it just means that your communication with your subject, which is portraiture 101 for me, is the connection with the subject. That is what's going to see you through. Because you could be the technically most amazing photographer in the world, but if you have no connection with the subject, it's game over.
Yes, and unfortunately so. I mean, when I started out learning, I kind of layered up the techniques, I suppose. So I started with portraiture outdoors rather than in the studio, so I didn't have to worry so much about lights. It was a case of finding somewhere where the light was okay. But even before that, I went to landscapes, because landscapes don't talk back. You don't have to pose them. They don't sit there on their phone when you're trying to talk to them or something like that, Exactly. So it was like I could get the hang of all of the controls on the camera in that setting, know your F numbers and this, that and the other, before then being in a setting where I was having to work with someone. I just found it was just too many things to think about for me.
Definitely. No, I totally understand that. But actually, weirdly, I think that's it. That's a good place to start, almost, as well, because with the landscape photographers that I have been around, they've taught me a lot as well, perhaps things compositionally that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise. So then when you're taking portraits within a landscape, suddenly you've got a little bit of background information and education that somebody in their craft that's been really good at what they do has shared with you, and then I'm looking for that, whereas perhaps I may have never have looked for that before. But you say that, Joe, about taking portraits outside, and say that perhaps it was easier because you didn't have to deal with lighting. You say that, but then you've got the sun to contend with, and that is a nightmare because it does its own thing. So it's sun's in, sun's out, moves here, moves there, then the wind blows, then this happens. It's very difficult taking pictures outside. So everything's a challenge.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we used to sort of look for something which was kind of like very light shade. So the light on the person's face would be even. It was
Good
like
plan.
really, really basic sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. And I know that sort of there's this term people use, this open shade term thing that people use, and a lot of people sort of say, "Oh, stand someone under a tree," and you can do, and that's fine. But it also massively depends on what's underneath the tree as well, because most of the time, let's face it, it's probably going to be grass. So then, what happens with that is then you get this big old green cast coming in under the face as well. So there's always something, it's never straightforward. It's difficult.
Oh, yeah. It's like when people try and do something fun with families and they're outside, they think, oh, yeah, let's get the kids to just lie on the floor with their hands, on their chins. And you think, yeah, let's get their faces green off the grass. That sounds lovely.
Oh, 100%. And if it's anything like my kids, they will absolutely find the biggest pile of mud and then roll in it and smear it all across their faces as well. So, yeah, that's, working with kids is a whole different thing.
Oh, yeah. I avoid that. I'll try rather work with bottles and things like that.
I don't blame you.
So when you're working with, for example, business people or entrepreneurs or maybe actors, celebrities, those kinds of things, how much time do you feel it tends to take to actually get to the person, get to the essence of the person when you're taking a photo? Because you get some headshot photographers that seem to sort of line people up and they get them through really quite quick, whereas sort of some of your packages that you do are a little bit longer, a little bit more involved.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question, Joe, because funnily enough, like earlier this week, I photographed 70 people in one day.
Wow.
So that was huge, high volume. That was actually, the job was actually for a school. And I was photographing, I wasn't photographing the kids, I was photographing the staff. So all the staff and the teachers. And I'm back next week to do another 70 people. But this one was very much kind of, they wanted to put the personnel on the website or, wherever it was. And they wanted, I'd previously worked with the head in different places. And so they called me in and I've literally got a list of people's names and I have less than 5 minutes with each person. And so really how it starts, and I said the same thing 70 times throughout the day. So the person walks in the door, and of course, how you greet them is huge. So of course, I was going to say I stand up. I didn't sit down all day. So, but I've stood up, and I'll say so. I'll introduce myself, and I'll check their name against the list. I'll be like, oh, is this whoever? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm in for 9:40 or something. I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. My name's Hannah. I'm going to be doing your pictures today. Here's what we're going to do. We're basically going to photograph you slightly one way, straight on, then the other side. We're all going to be tethered to the computer. So as I take the pictures, you'll be able to see them. We'll take a bunch, and then we'll have a quick look at them afterwards. If you hate all of them, then we'll start all over again. If there's any adjustments we want to make, then fine. But don't worry, we'll make sure that you've got something that you're happy with before you leave. So where I need you is to just sit around here and then follow my direction. And then we basically work together. So don't give them much time to think, but I also give them the reassurance before we do anything. I sort of say to them, like, don't stress, because some of them will come in and they'll be like, oh, my hair's all over the place, and then we just deal with that. And knowing that they get to see them as well before they leave, knowing they'll have a chance to go again if for any reason something's out of place, sort of makes them relax a little bit.
Right, yeah.
I keep my voice light, and I get, these days are exhausting for me because they're very high energy from my point of view. I've got to put a lot in because I need good expression out of them. I need to be able to make them feel comfortable. I've got to make them laugh, perhaps. I don't go out of my way to make them laugh, but I, try to take away. I don't do jokes or anything ridiculous like that, but I've just got to try to keep them, keep it moving, keep a good rapport going. And so, that tends to work quite well because even though I've only just met them, I only have a short space of time with them. I think that 20 years of doing this gets me to know quite quickly what to do, and you've got to match the energy of the person coming in towards you. I say that a lot when I speak about these things of how to get. One of my most commonly asked questions is people say, how do you get the subject to relax? And I say that depends on a number of things. Firstly, don't talk about once you've got all that out of the way as to what's going to happen, like explain the process, then talk to them about anything else. So talk to them about how their day's going, or the football, or weather, or anything. Take their mind off of what's about to happen. The next thing is to match their energy. So if you've got somebody that's come in and they've just walked through the door and they've just been like, right, I've got to have this done. Where do you want me to sit? I'll go into full stand-up alpha mode, and I'll be like, let's say, for instance, I'll be like, right, okay, nice to meet you. Okay, my name's Hannah. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to have you sat this way. You're going to look towards me. We're going to do this. I'll have you out of here in less than 5 minutes. Is that okay with you? And they're like, oh, okay. Somebody just took that away from me. But then what happens if I have somebody come in and that's really shy and really quiet and really worrying about it? Then I'll say to them, like, don't worry. I completely understand. It's all good. I slow my voice down. I slow my energy down, and I match them. Because if I had gone in and be like, right, you want to do this, they'll be like, you just make it 10 times worse. So matching somebody's energy is really effective, because you kind of, the people that want to just get in and get it done, and you meet them with clear, direct, fast instruction, that works really well. The people that need a bit more time, and you give them more time and a bit more reassurance, that really helps too. So I think, this is a long way round to answer the question. I'm probably answering many in the within that. But yes, that when you're doing high volume like that, that tends to work well. How do I know, and how long does it take if I've got more time? It really comes down to the person that's in front of you and what you're trying to achieve. So if I'm doing, say, a longer session, somebody's booked in for a longer session, which they are trying to do like a personal branding shoot, there will be a lot of back and forth before that day. So we would have had perhaps a Zoom meeting, several phone calls to discuss about what it is that they're trying to achieve. What do we need to do throughout the shoot? Are there any props we need to bring? Let's put a shot list together. Where are the pictures ending up? Perhaps they've shown me the kind of wireframe of their website that's being built, their brand colors. I get I make much more of an investment at that point in time into their business and what they're trying to achieve, because we want to be shooting for a longer period of time, but we have more to cover. It's not just a case of bashing out a few headshots. So that tends to take a little bit longer. In the middle of all of that, you've kind of got the celebrity aspect, which is, I don't do tons and tons of, but I have photographed people, but most of the time they have very little time, but yet you still need to get the character out. And there could be, this is an interesting one, because perhaps there might be twofold. There might be the persona that they are used to portraying with their image, and actually that might be slightly different to the person that walked in the door. So what we've got to try and establish is who are we trying to convey? Is it the person that we know from the TV and then, or in this particular role that they've played and they're known for, or are we just throwing all that into the air and just trying to communicate the person and get across the character that's in front of you? So that requires... With
actors, that's a particularly challenging one, I should think, because they're so used to immersing themselves in different characters, different personalities, that people have seen that they don't know who the real person is.
Right, exactly. And it depends what the shoot is for. Are they doing the shoot for publicity for something that they've just shot, so therefore they need to kind of reference that role or not? But I love working with actors because they are extremely, of course they have to be, but they're extremely good if you say to them, okay, let's try something a bit more serious or a bit more like, you just give words to them and they can just change their expression, whereas most of the general public, of course, we can't do that. So therefore that needs to be fast, so they appreciate your efficiency, but yet it's the same skills, the same being yourself, communicating. I don't ever treat a celebrity any differently to anybody else that walks into my studio. People are people, and actually that has probably been one of my strongest assets, is that I myself, and I think people can clearly read that quite quickly. They'll realize if you're being authentic. They'll realize if you're all flappy and can I get a selfie and all that. Like, that's just not me at all. I don't do that at all. I'm just thinking back. I was like, no, I've never asked for a photo with anybody. It might be that someone's taken one at the end, or everyone's jumped in for a group shot. But I personally have never asked for a photo with someone.
They must find that quite refreshing, though, really, that you're not demanding things of them, that they can just do what they're there to do.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, though, is that it's because you're not like that. And you must think about this. I mean, these are people that walk down the street or are just going out, anywhere, and they're being dragged. Oh, can I have a picture? Can I have a picture? Can I have a picture?
Yeah.
That must, it's not a life for me. I mean, like, it must be exhausting. So I think the fact that they can come in and they realise quite quickly, oh, this person just wants to talk to me face to face as a person and is treating me like they would treat anybody else. I think they find it really refreshing, and it makes them relax it to a whole different level as well. And knowing that you're not going to be all funny around them is the fastest way for me to get them to relax and to talk to you about that. I've had conversations with people where you would expect the conversation to be all about them, and then they suddenly start turning it around and they ask me about myself and the business and how long I've been doing it and where did I grow up, and conversations that you're having with these people that you never thought in a million years you would. But I think the fact that
they talk about themselves all day, every day,
exactly.
I suppose, with these interviews that they do. So actually, it's probably quite nice for them to get off script a bit.
Right. And that's it. And then, of course, the way that you are in your body language and how you respond. And, if you're quite relaxed and, just responding to them like any other normal person would, if it was a friend of theirs or whatever, just in a normal conversation, everything's normal, then, you get to a level of trust quite quickly. And then, of course, that's ultimately what portraiture is about, is trust. So it works really well.
Yeah. So is that something you feel you've always been able to do, or have you had to grow into this? I mean, was there the first time you had a celebrity come into the studio, or you did them on location or whatever it was, was there sort of severe butterflies? You were feeling a bit starstruck, or have you always been someone who's actually fairly comfortable in this kind of situation?
Yeah, I think the thing is, I've grown up, my nan and my mum are very, very sociable people. No one in my family, none of us have ever been particularly the kind that, fascinated with celebrity. Celebrity's not really like a thing for us. No one seems to care about it. People are people. I think rather than like the first time that I really photographed somebody that was, very well known, it was more a case of the pressure. I wanted to be sure that I'd crossed every T and dotted every I and made sure that I had a backup just in case something was to go wrong. And I just I wanted to make sure that the process was, okay, in they come, get it done, be professional, be efficient, get it done, and impress people with your manner and your professionalism. And then that, and hopefully, you'll already be off to a good start. If I'm faffing around and, haven't set this up, or, oh, this has gone wrong. Don't get me wrong, things go wrong. Of course they do. Things are never going to be seamless. But the fact that you may have prepared a little better for the fact that what happens if the trigger's not firing, or what happens if,
oh, yes,
this or that, whatever it is, if the tether doesn't work, or, whatnot.
Yeah.
So if you, I think the more you can be prepared, the better. Yeah, it's not so much a case. I've never been starstruck. I've never had that, but I definitely felt at times, especially the first time, I was like, I need to be sure that I've got this covered, because of course it's not just the celebrity that comes in. You're doing this usually on behalf of a team or for a particular reason. So there's press teams, PR teams, their agent, this person, that person, or the client that they're working with, and there's so many variables to it. There's a lot of people in that studio.
So spare lights, spare camera, spare trigger, spare everything.
pretty much, just have a spare of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just have to be as prepared as you reasonably can be. It's like when I don't know about you, but I tend to like to set everything up and just grab a poor innocent bystander, or perhaps an assistant if I've got one for the day, make sure that I get everything looks right on them before the first actual paying client comes in the room, so that that barring a failure of the equipment, everything's already ready to go. You haven't got to sort of faff around with a light meter or anything in front of the actual client.
No, 100%. I mean, of course, with the best will in the world, you can try to set stuff up, but ultimately, until that person is in and their actual height as well, because that's been another thing,
exactly.
Is if you're there's various things that you're going to have to do to tweak. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, it depends sort of how how stressful the environment is, etc. But yeah, I think as much as you can, if you've got somebody, I mean, I don't work with assistants. However, on a couple of shoots, I have asked for an assistant. I've asked somebody to come in, exactly that. Just having somebody there where I can sort of say to them, right, batteries on 2 bars on the back left, so just have one ready. Something like that, just so that you're not, and that, okay, right, let's do this next sequence, and then you can then say to everybody, right, we need to stop for just 2 minutes while you change outfit or whatever you're going to do. We're going to change batteries at the same time. So everybody is kind of like in sync, and you've got other eyes, because when you're shooting away, you can't see, perhaps you've got a key light rigged right up, high somewhere. You can't see the battery bars on the back. So the last thing you want to do is be shooting in a roll, and then you're getting some really good stuff, and then boom, then goes the battery. So you just, it's fine. It's fine if that happens, of course, but the normal things happen. But the more you can have somebody, a second pair of eyes, just keeping an eye on those things for you, I think the more seamless it's going to be.
Yeah, I think so. So stepping back a little bit from some of the detail of doing the business, would you say then actually how you've got it all set up and the way you've put your business together overall, is that something that you've done more building on your own strengths or more to target a particular market?
It's weird, Joe, because I kind of, my business has evolved over the years. So I had a studio. Well, I've had many, but I've had two, like the two major ones that I've had on the high street. So they've been sort of like glass fronted shops, beautiful shops on the high street, rented commercial premises, and I've had them for long periods of time. One was for 7 years, one was for 10 years. And when I was doing that kind of work, it was more family portraiture, perhaps children's photography, babies, kind of a real mixture, kind of those sort of, and I'll be doing headshots as well. Basically anybody that needed a photograph, was welcome to come in. And then what started to happen is that my education side of what I do started to grow and grow, and I was in different places a lot of the time. And what would tend to happen is that I was going to different countries, and it was wonderful. Everything was amazing. But how I was running my business is that I would have the client come in for a shoot. I'd edit the photos, bring them back for a viewing a week later. We'd choose wall products. The process was long, and I would probably see them 2-3 times in that process, whether obviously they're in for the shoot, then they come back for the viewing, then they're perhaps picking up their products or coming back to come and choose some products. So the process of my interaction with the client was longer. Whereas I was doing headshots, it was much quicker. I could actually see them. They'd come in for their headshot, and then what I would do is host the pictures online the same day, send them the link. They would choose by themselves at home, and then they would send me through what they wanted, like the images that they wanted. I would edit them, and then I would upload them to a Dropbox folder. And my interaction with them was one time. So what that meant is that actually, if I was going away, if I knew I had a trip coming up, I could book in these headshots, and I could book 6-7 in back to back on the day before I went. Get them all in, shoot throughout the whole day. And then the next day, like that evening, I could resize them, get them posted online. And then when I was flying or traveling or whatever the next day, it's over to them for them to be choosing what they wanted. And then by the time I'd landed or, was where I needed to be and was bored in a hotel room while I'm waiting for the setup for the next day, I'm connected to the Wi-Fi, editing their photos and delivering still the same day. It's like it might be the next day or something. So the service wasn't any slower, but it just meant that I could be anywhere. Once I'd taken the shots, that process, they didn't need to come back and view them on the screen. They didn't need to look at products. They didn't need to talk to me, etc. So I started to sort of channel my business more towards that side of things because it suited my lifestyle at the time. Then, of course,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sort of seemed to work better for me because all that I was finding is that if I had somebody booked in for a family shoot or something, I'd have to say to them, okay, so I'm not here next week because I'm away then. And then they'll be like, we're away the week after. I'm like, okay, so then I'm away there. And before you're trying to, sort of coordinate these diaries, if you're doing it, anybody knows that if you're doing kind of portraiture and you're doing family portraiture of some description or any kind where you're selling products, in-person sales is always going to be the better thing to do. Of course it is. But it depends very much on my time as well. So then COVID happened, and then that completely, of course, put an end to any travelling abroad or anything like that. But during that time, since COVID, I've had 2 children, and that has massively, of course, impacted my life and my time and how I run my business. So
of course, yeah.
I mean, we're very. We don't have a lot of help. We don't have a whole team of people. We certainly don't have a village. My other half's parents are family are in Norway, and I lost my mum, so my dad still works. We haven't got a team of people around us. I don't have sisters, or it's very much and we're both self-employed, so it's just us. So our time is really limited and very precious. So therefore, again, we want to make sure that when we're going to work and the way that we're working, it's the most efficient as possible and the processes are the most efficient as possible. So I still do other kinds of photography. I still do family portraiture. I still do other types of photography, but I've eliminated the viewing process. So rather than people coming back to view, and some people, you might say, oh, that's the kind of nail in the coffin, that's the worst thing you can do. But is it though? Because the alternative is that if I don't have time to see them, and all that happens is then my service is going to slack, because they'll be waiting longer for me to come and see their pictures. I'd rather that they had a quicker, more efficient service, and that you say, oh, maybe they didn't buy that picture for the wall that they might have. Maybe not, but if it means that I've tied that job up and done it and done another job in the meantime, did I really lose out? Probably not.
No, it's juggling all these things, isn't it? Really, you've got to have it. You've got to have a business that works for you. It's not just you working for the business. It's 100%. Got to sit in with your lifestyle. It's got to work for the clients and everybody, really. And it sounds like you've found a good way of doing so. I mean, the fact that you've been in business for quite some time now, it means that you've had to be quite resilient. You've had to find solutions to different things. So how would you say you cope with stress and pressure as a self-employed person?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. Yeah, this year in October will be my 20th year in business, which is insane. I just don't know what happened. But yeah, how do I cope? It's a good question. Beforehand, before the children, I would be in the pool at 7:00 every morning. I'm a swimmer, so I'd just be in the pool, and that was really good for me, because it was sort of, I didn't have to talk to anybody. You're in your own head. I'm exercising at the same time. And it was really good. I wouldn't be in there for long. I'd just, like an hour or something, I'd just be in there, and it was enough time for me to sort of get my headspace to help. Now that doesn't happen anymore. And it's very, my life looks very different. It's definitely very stressful. It's definitely very stressful at times, because, as I say, we 2 self-employed people juggling kids. They're not in nursery, and, they're too young to go to school yet. So, and I'm also very aware of the fact that I'm not going to get this time back. And, this has been a real shock to me, because I wasn't even sure if I was going to have kids. I wasn't sure that was going to happen. So COVID has done something positive for me, at least, in some respects, because I don't think I would have stopped, in all honesty. But I'm very aware of what I have, and having lost my mother, and you look at life, it does change you, and you look at life very differently. I've always been somebody that realizes that life is short, but now I'm very much realized that you really do have to make the most of everything and try to enjoy everything. Even though it's stressful at times, you need to try and enjoy those moments, because they're not going to be there forever, and you just don't know. We all act and carry on like we have all the time in the world, but ultimately you never really know. So let's try and fill our time with stuff that we enjoy more. But there's no doubt that it does get stressful. Really, again, I've lost the ability to get out and exercise, like I used to. That won't be forever. I will get back to that. I know that. But for now, I'm very much a music person. It absolutely affects my mood and how I am. So I will do my best. Sometimes if I'm really stressed out, I will crank up the music, and it will be loud in this house. And ultimately, everyone kind of wins, because then the kids start jumping around and dancing. Everyone's in a good mood, So it kind of rubs off. I mean, even though that wasn't my plan, I'm like, Mummy, what's the? Yep. Just
you want something with a really, really fast beat, so they get really knackered really quick.
Yeah, I mean that works for sure. I mean, I'm not sure that many people's kids dance around to drum and bass, but they do here. So it's I mean, but honestly, anything like, my music taste is so varied and broad and all over the place but it just, how I've been and how I am is that there's always been music on, there's always been sound on. And weirdly, I walked into this school the other day. When I went in there, I was there really early. The first shot was at 8:00, so I was in early. And when I walked into the school, they had music playing. And I said to the member of staff, I said, that is so nice. I said, you never, ever hear music in school unless it's part of a class. And they said, oh, yeah, the cleaners put it on in the morning. He said, but yeah, it's great fun because everybody, it makes everybody happy. I'm like, you're so right. And for an environment where you're sort of, it really stuck with me. I was like, wow, why doesn't everyone do this in schools? Like, it would just make it would just lift people's mood a bit, and make it feel less hostile. When I go and shoot in these offices, these open plan offices, and there's not a single sound apart from people tapping at their keyboards, it makes me realise how lucky I am with my job, because I would lose the will to live if I had to do that.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I mean, with music, it's something that really can tap into the emotions so powerfully. And people are sometimes surprised by some of the things that I listen to relax. It's sort of thing that they say, no, that makes me stressed listening to that. Actually, it's something that for me is if it can kind of almost take over your senses, then everything else just disappears. It sort of melts into the background.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. If you can get immersed in something else, it takes you out of your head for a minute, and before you know it, you might find yourself singing along to something, and you're actually, therefore, if you're thinking about the words as what's coming next or doing something else, you're actually forgetting about all the other stress or whatever. And just for a short period of time, that tends to work. I'm definitely not one of these people that's kind of like, oh yeah, I go and take a bath and do this. There's just no time. The reality of my life is that there just isn't time. People say you should
no
make
scented
time.
Candles, no scented candles around the bath. Then
not in here, Joe. No, definitely not. But we kind of, everybody. There's no disrespect to anybody that does that, and don't get me wrong. Honestly, there would be times where that would be lovely, but the chance of it happening is so slim. I've kind of just pushed it off the radar for now. But yeah, I mean, the pressures and the stress, they are there, definitely. And over the years being in business, there's times, like even last autumn, late summer, autumn, things got quiet, and quiet in a, you're okay. You get things, like I've been in this business long enough to know that there's, things are seasonal and go up and down in various times, and been through 2 double dip recessions. Done all this. You kind of learn to ride the wave.
Yeah.
But what was weird last year is I couldn't really pinpoint why. I was like, oh, and I got caught for a minute. I got caught up thinking maybe I need to change my style. Maybe that it's something that people are going for a different style at the moment. Everybody likes things very flat lit and this kind of natural light looking style photography. And I got pulled into it and started to shoot a little bit like that, and thinking maybe that's what people wanted. Possibly the worst thing I've ever done, because what happened is I wasn't enjoying my work. I didn't like the result, and I was completely wrong. It's just, I mean, it turns out, it seems that for most people, I don't know, it'd be interesting for people listening to this if they experience the same thing. But certainly last year for us, myself and my partner, we had this kind of quiet period, and it definitely seemed to alleviate after there was a change of government and that kind of things started to settle. And now we're so busy, we're kind of like, I don't remember the last time we were this busy. So it just shows you that in 6 months, things won't be the same. I mean, yes, I'm not saying just sit there and don't do anything and don't change and don't adapt. You do have to look inwards, but sometimes you don't have to look as inwardly as you might think. There might be other things going on that are outside of your control, and that you just got to kind of have a bit of a nervous still. But then in those times where it is quiet, instead of panicking about it, what we tried to do instead is we gave ourselves portfolio boosts. So we went, okay, well, we're usually complaining about the fact that we don't have any free time. Now we do have some free time. Instead of sitting here panicking, let's book in some personal projects. Let's book in these sorts of, use this time to shoot what we want to shoot, add some more things to our portfolio. And who knows, maybe it might even be the fact that we did that then has produced us, has led to us being this busy now. Who knows? So
exactly. Sometimes that can work in your favour. I mean, when things went quieter for me over COVID initially, it was an opportunity to try out a few different techniques of product photos in the studio. It was a chance to have a little bit of a play, to be honest, just to do the stuff which actually got me into it in the first place, the stuff that's fun rather than the stuff that the clients want,
Oh God, so important because you're always working to somebody else's brief, aren't you? Somebody calls you up and they tell you what they want. No, very rarely. I mean, having said that, I was going to say very rarely do people say do what you do. That does happen, but most of the time, you're still producing things that are based on somebody else's requirements. So yeah, you don't have that full creative freedom like perhaps you would do. And of course, that was obviously a great time for you to go ahead and do that because of course nobody could tell you off for doing that, could they?
No, and the thing is, actually, when somebody does say to me, "Oh, do your thing," or "You know better than me, you're the expert," that's actually a red flag because a lot of the time that means they don't really know what they want.
Yeah.
And you show them something and they'll go, "No, not that." And you think it just means they haven't got that clear image in their mind of what they're after, what the purpose is of the shoot. It's almost like, well, we've been told we've got some money to spend for the website, or we've got to do a refresh on this, so we're doing it. Yeah, but what's your purpose? What are you trying to do? Oh, I don't know. You're the photographer. You come up with something.
I know. I love that. You're the photographer. But no, I tend to, the way around that I often find as well is that I say to people, especially before they come in, I say to them, have a look at my website, or it hasn't got to be my work. Do, Pinterest search, a Google Images search, or indeed some of your friends. If it's a LinkedIn headshot that you like that somebody else has, I was like, feel free to just bring some stuff along. Show me what you do like and show me what you don't like. And if they don't have time to do that, okay, then fine. But yeah, it eliminates, you want to try and eliminate that part where,
Definitely.
You want to try, for everybody's point of view, if you've got a clearer idea of where you're trying to get to, it's much easier for everybody involved.
Oh, definitely. Much, much less stressful if you can manage that. So do you then find that you enjoyed doing those sort of personal projects? And do you find now that you want to get more of that built into your time? Do you find time to keep your skills sharp, or are you just back to being too busy that's gone out the window again?
I mean, yeah, you are right. That does kind of happen when I look at the diary. I'm like, oh man, that's. I mean, it's good. It's a good problem to have, but the chance of having some time, you could be like, oh gosh. But having said that, I know when things are going to go quiet. The second it's school holiday times, which feels like it's ages away, yeah, of course it does, but it's really not if you're, like if you're thinking you're booking stuff in already.
No, just a few weeks, isn't it? Yeah.
It is really. So you kind of like, when you're booking stuff in advance, I know what's going to happen, especially the thing is having a business. I set my business up in a fairly affluent area, a fairly sort of recession-proof, as it were, area. Because the thing is with photography is it's not a necessity. So, and it may be that you set your business up in a different place to where you actually live. So, things you haven't always got to have it like right on your doorstep, and it's not just because you happen to live there. You've got to think about things of. Photography needs spare money, as it were. If you're going to have a family portrait done, people need to have the spare cash to be able to do that. So my business is set up in a fairly affluent area. But what that also means is that the second it is it is the February half term, no one's here. Why? Because they all go skiing. Right. The second that it's Easter, everybody is away for at least 2 weeks. There's a lot of private schools in that area too, so perhaps it could be 3 weeks. So these are the things that you start to know that, okay, so people take longer holidays. Most people have second vacation homes somewhere, and with that means they're going to use them. So there will be ups and downs and, times where, okay, people won't be around. But then what happens, of course, is the end of summer when everybody's back from holiday and everyone's got tan and feeling good. You are really busy because that's when they want their family portrait done. So you just got to learn the trends over time. So whilst I'm so busy now and I'm kind of looking at the next sort of the next couple of months, just thinking, oh man, this is going to be busy. It does also allow me to think, okay, yeah, but what's going to happen come July, August time. It's probably going to be quieter. So I can line stuff up for then. But what was quite good is before Christmas, Sony sent me out the new Alpha 1 Mark II. And I was in the process of trying to figure out at that point in time what I was going to be speaking about at the photography show and, what was I going to focus on this year, what part of the range, etc. So they sent me out a couple of cameras and a couple of lenses. So these are on loan. We're very fortunate is that we get these on loan for sort of 2 or 3 days and then they'll send it out to you. It's after launch, but just means that you can experiment and create some imagery with it, etc. But at that point, that wasn't under whilst it would be had the couple of the brands that I work with had new products out and you incorporate those, I wasn't doing it specifically for them. And this was perfect timing for me because this had come sort of shortly after maybe I should change my style, etc. And kind of doing all this work that I really didn't really like. And then I went back to shooting for myself just to try and I wanted to see the detail in the lenses. I wanted to see how fast the focus was. I wanted to see this. I wanted to see that. And I did this particular something that I never normally do. My portraits are fairly dark, fairly not a lot of colour going on. Some could say boring, but no, that's kind of my style. Yeah, but atmospheric, moody, that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't go for high colours and stuff. It's just not really my thing. But for some reason in my head, what I was looking to compare was I didn't know whether I was going to switch over models of which, because I love the colours that I get. I love the skin tones. I love all the colour reproduction of the R series, which I use. And I was looking to see how it would, I wanted to compare it to the Alpha series. So I decided to I chose 3 colours and I chose 3 models and I wanted to use the corresponding colour. So for each person. So I was going to, one had red, one had yellow, one had green. And I was photographing the person in red on a red background. Everything was very, very red. And the same with yellow, the same with green. Because I thought, well, across those colours, I'll get a good idea of how things are reproducing, etc. And I ended up shooting this series and doing this. And then I ended up in conversation with Sony, sort of like, they're like, oh, how did you find it? I was like, yeah, I did this. And before I knew it, they were like, oh, we want to do an article on that for Alpha Universe. That looks really cool. Before I knew it, something that I had done for no reason other than for my own test to sort of see how this colour reproduction worked has turned into an article that's about to go out on Alpha Universe, which is global and huge. But there was never any intention. Do you know what I mean? That wasn't I wasn't shooting this. The intention was like, I want to see how this works for myself because it's important which camera you choose and what all these things to me. So yeah, it's interesting that sometimes with these projects and in the process of doing that as well, not only the colour series, I shot something else during that series, which again, the image was so me. I was like, oh, thank goodness. That's what I should be doing. I was like, that is such a me image. I was like, yeah, that's, and this is it. And for anybody listening that sometimes thinks that you get bored of doing your own style or you're worried that all your work looks the same, that's the exact reason why people hire you, is because they like what you do and they like the style that you do. So if you then go trying to change it up and mix it up in every shoot that you do, it doesn't really work out for anybody. I mean, of course, I'm not saying don't change things and never change things, but what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with sticking to what you do and doing it well, because that's why people come to you.
Well, exactly. I mean, you can evolve things a bit. I mean, if we go back to when we were talking about music earlier, if a band which is known for producing a particular style of music all of a sudden switches, I mean, if Iron Maiden suddenly did K-pop,
Imagine. that would be. Well, actually, to be fair, I'd kind of want to see that. But
I think people would want to see it initially, and then afterwards it would be a bit of a killer. Really, people get to know you for your genre, for the stuff that you produce, and as you say, that's why they come to you. And it's kind of, if you can find a way of tweaking it so that you can sort of fall in love with it again, then that's the ideal. But to try and be someone else, almost, not so good.
Yeah, definitely. It's you're so right. That is absolutely true. But I think the trouble is because we're working. Most of us. If you're working every day and you seem to be producing the same images, and you think, oh gosh, everything's starting to look the same, and that's it does go through your head. I'm sure most people have had that you kind of just go, oh, perhaps it's us just getting a bit bored with our own work. Who knows? And then I always think that personal projects are good to have because then it allows you to do something completely different, but not at the expense of a client. And my other half was saying to me the other day, he was like, you need to do more of this stuff. He said, look what you do when you are left to your own devices and you're just left to create something. Look what you come up with. He said, we need to make time for this. You need to do this. And already sort of like, he said, well, what could you do? I was like, well, maybe, what about this? And he was like, that would be brilliant. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. But it's giving yourself time and space to be able to think and come up with that creative stuff. And that generally comes from not having somebody else breathing down your neck with a deadline, a brief and everything else. So it's worth doing.
It's tough because on the one hand, we've all got bills to pay, so we want the paying work gets the priority. But if you think like in other trades, sometimes you have to do a certain amount of CPD in order to remain in practice. And sometimes as photographers, we don't have to do that. So we perhaps then don't bother. But actually investing a little bit in that can improve our workflow, even if it's just making it a little bit quicker doing a cull or an edit or something like that. It doesn't have to be absolutely earth-shatteringly new. Mm-hmm. It's just finding ways in which we can keep ourselves fresh. Especially if we're starting to feel stale, I think quite important.
Yeah, 100%. And it's very interesting because when I was working with somebody recently who was looking to get into the industry, I was sort of talking about the corporate work and the corporate side of things that I do. And they're like, really? Do people need corporate headshots? I'm like you wouldn't believe. I was like, now more than ever. Because, of course, everything's very visual. Everyone has social media. Everyone's got this and that. And they're like, oh, isn't that really boring, though? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, it's as boring or as not as you want it to be, as how you make it to be. But what I can say is that when I go in, these images that I produce, what's lovely is I've just, on the breaks, I'm sending them straight through to the client. I'm uploading them, sending them through. And she's looking at them, she's going, these look amazing. Everybody looks so good. She's like, they almost look like they don't need any editing at all. And, this is great. So I'm using I'm using a 3-light setup on them, trying to get everybody looking as good as possible, good coaching, everything else. I mean, but I get paid very well for it. So the thing is, and because this person said to me, they're like, oh, isn't that really boring? It's much nicer to just photograph these people. I'm like, yes, but guess what? All the people that you're talking about that you're enjoying photographing, you're going to be paying them. You're going to be paying models to turn up for you, not that they're going to be paying, it's the other way around. So there is a balance between having to, as you say, produce the work that pays the rent, pays the bills, and then the work that when you get the crossover, that is it, of course, when you get the ones that pay you well and you've got absolute creative freedom. But let's face it, that happens once in a blue moon. But if the majority of the time you're producing work that you like and you enjoy creating and is good and looks nice and the client's happy, which is happening, 95% of the time that you're still producing the work that you like because it's in your style, etc., then you're winning in general, but it's very rare. I would say it's quite rare that you would be able to do completely fabricated shots that are completely artsy. You have a full team. You've got budget for a full team for costume and hair and location and unlimited this and that. and then
Then you
still
wake
got
up, yeah.
yeah, and then you get paid
Wake up
on
from
top
the
of
dream.
that, right? And then you get paid on top of that as well. Well,
And
that
on
doesn't
time.
happen. Yeah, that too. I mean, it's very rare that actually happens, but yeah, I mean that's yeah, I mean. It's nice
Yeah.
it's nice that that it does happen. It's not that it never happens, but I think if we're going to be real, I think if we're going to be real about the working life of a photographer, every day isn't like that.
No. So thinking about sort of ideal projects and things, do you have anything in mind, any goals that you're perhaps aiming to do, an ideal shoot you'd like to do? Anything like that, or goals for your business that you're aiming towards, or is it just basically keep ticking over and keep going?
That's definitely there's always an element to that. To kind of every year that you get through, you're like, yay, this is great.
Still here,
exactly. But no, I mean it's twofold now, because I guess my business is kind of split in two, and I sort of I formed a separate company for the education side of stuff that I do.
Okay.
And because there seems to be more of that, like the speaking and educating side of stuff. And then I've got like the business, as it were, because I found it easier to just separate them, because then otherwise I wouldn't be able to keep an eye on how healthy or not healthy, etc. The business was doing, and like the day-to-day taking pictures, kind of side of it. But yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky, and the speaking side of things and the workshops and all of that, I really enjoy. It's so much fun. I love connecting with other photographers, and I like our workshop days are so much fun that doing more and more of them is always fun. But I'd like to perhaps think of some different themes and maybe plan them in advance a little bit more. At the moment, it's just kind of like having to, like any of my time, it's like, okay, smash and grab where you can. Like, okay, there's a weekend or there's a Saturday there that we might be able to do one. Or, I would like to try and get that structured a little bit more so that we've got things in place. In terms of shoots, there's a couple of things that, I want to pick a couple of themes, for instance. I think the fact that I ended up doing this colour blocking thing before Christmas for Sony, and then it working out the way that it did, there's perhaps a couple of themes that I want to do. One of the ladies that was recently on my workshop, she is a florist day to day, and she actually is in the same town. And I said to her, I was like, we should team up here. I said, because you've got a whole set of skills that I do not have. She was like, oh, I'd love to make a set for you. I was like, yes, okay, this is brilliant. So I was like, I'd want to work with more and more people around me that have skills in areas which would, if you put the whole thing together, so working with stylists, working with makeup artists, working with florists, people that just where they've got skills in the departments that I don't, if you all work together, you're going to create something that is so much stronger, I feel, because there's if I try and do everything, let's face it, it's not going to work out very well. So there's that side of things I would like to do. Definitely, I know I would like to try and do a couple of these before the year's out. YouTube has definitely been something that, we enjoy, but we need to push more. Again, the biggest problem there is that my other half is my videographer. And if we try to film anything at the moment, I mean, I'm sure you heard the second I opened the door, Mummy, Daddy. So trying to get any time where we can both be in the same room without having a little voice behind us is quite difficult at the moment. But that is something that we want to work on. And then, just for the rest of the business, it's just a case of just carrying on, I guess. It's very nice. I get a lot of work from recommendation and returning customers, and keeping the diary full is a lovely thing, and being introduced to new clients that are, big clients, etc. But I'll take any work, big or small. It's you need it all. So it's just a case of I'm not really trying to pursue anything so much there. We want to make our the website smoother and easier to navigate for clients, not for photographers. For clients, when they're kind of thinking, just make it easier, is to show them the process as to what happens if you've got high volume headshots that needs to be done. Show them that they've got the option of having them online the same day. Show them how do you know what I mean? Just explaining the process a little better through video format, so that they get a better understanding, so they know what's going to happen, and therefore I think that helps when making their decisions on who to work with.
Yeah, it's getting rid of the unknowns. People like at least the illusion of certainty anyway. I mean, nothing in life is really certain, but they like to have an idea of what's going to happen. They don't want everything to be completely unknown. So if you can show them like that, it does make that decision process that much more straightforward for them, doesn't it, really?
Definitely. And it was interesting. I always moan at photographers to have a headshot because we kind of have no excuse. But the amount of photographers that I see that don't have a picture of themselves on their website. And I'm like, listen, the person that's thinking of booking you wants to see who they're coming to. And I had a bit of a moan earlier this week because I was really busy. I had a Zoom call with a potential new client on Monday or something. And I came in afterwards. My other half was like, oh, how did it go? And I was like, I don't know. I said, it feels like one of those things. I said, that could so easily have been an email. I don't know why that was a Zoom call. I'm really not sure why that needed to be a Zoom call. He was like, Hannah, are you stupid? I was like, yes, probably. Tell me. He said, because he said, the thing is, yes, it could have been an email. He said, but they want to see you. They want to talk to you. They want to hear you talk. They want to see what you're like. He said, they want to know who they're working with. It was like, they said, of course it could have been an email, but by joining a Teams call and having an interaction with you and having the live conversation with you, they get to see exactly what you're like. And he said, that's your strong point. It was like, do it. Stop moaning and get on with it. I was like, oh yeah, fair point. So he's really got a point there. But it never crossed my mind. I was just busy and I just went, oh, that could easily have been a Teams. It could have been an email. But it's a very good point. I think for us to be visible in front, for our clients is a very, very good point because they want to come and see who they're working with, how you are. Do you feel like someone that is going to connect well with them? I think it's important for us to be seen.
Yeah, I think it's sort of demystifying the experience a bit for people who are a bit worried about it all and thinking, well, if I let that person into our company's premises and that, are they just going to take over and we can't do anything all day because they're in the way everywhere? And you can show how you can set something up in a relatively small space, or how you can make use of what's already there to bring in existing aspects of the branding and structure of the business into the background of the image subtly. All these sorts of things. I mean, it's less of an unknown. It's a lot easier for them to think, I can cope with that.
It's so true. And I saw a post, it was actually on LinkedIn. This is going to divide people. I'm quite good at this, Joe. Sorry if I completely divide your listeners here. But I saw a post on LinkedIn. It was from a photographer. And it was with regards to how they dress. And this person was basically saying that they are a photographer, they are a creative, and they would it's all about being comfortable for them, and they're artistic. So they will turn up however they want to turn up to a shoot. And there was loads of photographers jumping on, kind of like, yeah, that's right, exactly, that's how it should be. No one should tell us how to dress, etc. And I'm like, yeah, true, no one should be telling you how to dress. However, for me, there's a small little, but this is me personally as well. I would always, as my mother taught me, no matter how you feel, get up in the morning, get showered, look presentable as much as you can, because it will just make you feel better. You'll feel better and you'll feel more put together for the day. Regardless of even if you end up sitting on the sofa or whatever, just, and there's some days, of course, Sundays, I just don't do that if it's a weekend. But if I've been hired by a corporate company and I'm coming into their offices, I can at least make an effort to do my makeup, do my hair and look presentable. Now, don't turn up in a suit. I don't dress with high heels and a suit. Absolutely not. But I can make the effort out of respect for the fact that if they are dressing up and that's their company attire and that's what everybody else has to do when they go in there. If I turn up with my hair screwed up, and all my clothes unwashed and everything else, and the same, I guess, if you're doing someone's wedding. If everybody sort of dresses up for a wedding, yes, I mean, of course you have to be comfortable. Yes, you have to be able to do your job and all of this. But I sort of feel that having the attitude of, well, I do what I want and it's, the client can just sort of stick it. I thought, eesh, I mean, that again, I mean, that might be the difference between, other people might not like my attitude and completely disagree with me. And that's absolutely fine. We're all entitled to our own opinions. But for me, I sort of feel that perhaps that is part of it. It is part of the package that, somebody knows how you conduct yourself, how you like your behavior, your presentation, all of these things will help them decide whether you are the right fit for them or not.
Yeah, it's a brand. It's part of your brand, the look of you, how you communicate with people. And I think one of the things which is the greatest obstacle to people buying something is dissonance in a brand. So if you, on the one hand, you're trying to say, look, I'm a high-end London photographer, and then you turn up looking like you've been dragged out of the gutter or something, it doesn't match, and it's going to cause people to question it. It's like if you go into an expensive shop, you expect to see things put out nicely. You don't expect them all to just be chucked here, there, and everywhere. It's you expect certain things to go with a brand. So it's also, I think, can be useful as almost like a persona. So for some people, they find that when they're working in these environments where they're going into a location and they're the outsider and they've got to persuade all these people to pose for their headshots, is that they're almost putting on a persona themselves. So they might put on then like a uniform for it.
Yeah.
Meaning you can take that off when you get home. That persona, you can actually consciously take off work and say, I'm done with that. So it's a separation as well.
Definitely. I think it just comes down to the fact exactly that. And it's not to say that, anyone's better than anybody else or anything like this. No. It's just a case of, it's just, for me, it's just an overall presentation of, perhaps if you show up and, behave in a way that, I think that was nice as well, is I get a lot of repeat business and recommendation. And I know that the recommendation, let's face it, if we all used the same lighting recipe and they could choose anyone, right? So what are the other things that are going to set you apart? Yeah, it might be price, and some people go, oh yeah, but the guy down the street charged less than me, he's taking all the work. But then they're not the clients for you, are they? What you got to think of is that you're being recommended based on your, professionalism, your efficiency, that how smooth you make the process, how you make the people feel, and the overall package. It isn't just a case of, and of course the images, of course, but it's not just the images, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. It's how you make people feel. Because if you went in and took great pictures, but you were rude to everybody and everyone went, oh my gosh, don't get her back again, then you're not going to get hired. That's it. But if everyone leaves and kind of likes their pictures and then says to you, what's nice is when I've gone back into some of these places, someone stuck their head round the door. They're like, oh, thanks for doing my picture. I really love it. It's the first picture that I've ever had of me that I really like. And even though it's my work one, I printed it out. Great. This makes me happy, and that's what you want. So it's a case of, it's the overall package. I think it's not just one thing.
No, if it fits in with your brand, if it's going to connect with the right type of person that's your customer, then fine. If it doesn't, then you just risk shooting yourself in the foot, really. You just risk undermining your own business, I think. And that's not just with how you dress. That could be the type of website that you have. That could be the things that you post on social media.
Absolutely.
Anything like that, really. It could be just simply the language that you use when you're interacting with people. Every single little bit of what we do when we are our own business makes a difference.
You are so right, Jo. And I think lots of people forget about that or think it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what you post on social media, etc. Well, your clients probably are watching. That's the thing. They could be having a look from the outside. And if you're spouting off about something, etc., and they don't agree with it. I mean, we all have to be our own people, and we're not saying don't, it's important to be yourself. But you're right. You have to think about the whole thing. Never before have we been so visible online to so many people who, without really knowing you, can form a very fast opinion of you before actually having met you in person. So it's important. As you say, all these things are important.
Yep, visual impression. Well, I mean, that's what you're selling to them. Let's face it. If you're saying that you want to do a headshot or a portrait, you're selling to them the idea that first impressions are important. Well, you've got to think about your own then, haven't you?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And actually, weirdly, when I was at the show, I saw a friend of mine, and one of the guys that works, for another store. That I was running around, and he was like, "Oh, it's lovely catching up with you on Instagram and seeing what you're up to." He said, "We need more mum content." I went, "Hang on, wait, what are you talking about?" So I'm not going to be a mum blogger here. And he said, "No." He said, "But what's really funny," he said, "is that when you get home and your kids have like sitting on top of you and putting pencils in your hair and stuff," he said, "every single one of us as parents can relate to that." He said, "It's nice to see that, he said, it's nice." He said, we need more of your life in general." I said, "Well, I never post pictures of the kids. I don't show the kids." He said, "No, I'm not saying that." He said, "I'm not saying that." He said, "I'm saying that what's really nice is that if you've been woken up 3 times in the night, when we look at your story in the morning and we've been woken up 3 times in the night and we're off to do a shoot as well, we all know that we're in it together." And I thought, yeah, that's a good point. I was like, that's quite nice, actually. Like, I think there's something nice about being real, but yeah, bearing in mind as to, what you're putting out. And I think that's what's the number one piece of advice I would say. It's a very cliche thing to say, but to always be yourself is so important. And I always say that whether I'm on stage, in the pub, just, wherever I am, you're not going to see a different me. I'm always the same. So you can never trip up then as well. If like you're not suddenly acting out something and then someone sees you and, overhears a conversation and you're completely different. But if you're always yourself, then you can't, people are not everyone's going to like you. And that's absolutely fine. If we don't set out to try and please everyone and get everyone to like us, then you're already on a winner. But some people will warm to you and identify with you and, connect with you more than others. And as long as you don't try and please everyone, then I think you're good.
Yeah, exactly. You just never can. And there will always be someone that will find a reason that they don't like you for whatever that might be. They don't like your business. They don't like your photos for something. And, people make emotional decisions. They're not all rational. For some people, it almost seems to be entirely emotional. But, these things are all part of doing business. And, as well as the photography skills, we need these kind of basic brand building skills. So, I mean, with the people that you're teaching then, in your workshops and so on, do you think, are you optimistic for the future of the industry, seeing how they're going? Are they people that you feel are mastering the craft? Is there still that hunger to become an accomplished photographer?
Yeah, I do actually. And I think what's interesting in that is that there's two things really. I guess the way that I teach is very much in a way that I take it quite seriously, and I try to cram in a lot of information because I want you to be able to leave and then recreate it yourself. I want you to know what you're doing. I want you to learn, if you know what I mean. Now,
not just come away with pictures for your portfolio saying, "Oh, I was at a training day. Here's a picture of the model," which everyone else has got. Yeah,
absolutely. So there is definitely a divide happening now within the industry, whereas workshops, as it were, aren't necessarily workshops. They are more, I would say, portfolio building days. And I always say to the people that come on my course, if they say to me, "Can I put the photos on my website?" I say to them, if you can, if you're confident that you have the ability to set it up yourself again and you have the equipment to do it, and you're absolutely sure that if somebody looked at that picture and rang you and said, "I want that photo," that you can reproduce it, then go ahead. So, but if you're not at that stage yet, keep it back until you are, because otherwise it's a case of false advertising. If someone else has set everything else up for you and you don't have the ability or the means to do it, then it's just, what are we really doing? What's it there for? So there's a definite divide in that, the people that are on my courses are there to learn. And there's been 2 people that were on the last course that have sent me messages and attached photos of, like where they're shooting, etc., and what they're thinking of doing. And, will this work, etc. I think I'm going to use this that we talked about. Or, someone's done a test shot and they're like, "Oh, it's not coming out the way that, what am I doing wrong?" And, like, I can't, it seems the same as when we did it. And I'm like, aha, it's because the room's smaller. Or, like I go back to them and I'll tell them, where the problem is. So it kind of it's an ongoing dialogue, and those people are definitely serious about getting it right. There will always be an element of, and there's some companies that are out there right now that do a fantastic job of putting on amazing days for people to just go and take nice photos and come away with nice photos. And that's what they are. That's not what I do so much. It's, I could do, and that would be fine, but I'm more interested in passing on information, and where that can be seen as well is when people come and book in for one-to-one days, because that they're absolutely serious about them getting it right and nailing it and getting it sorted. So I definitely think that there's definitely people out there that really want to do this and really want to get it right, for sure. And they're the people that I would really, really love to help.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is what you want. I mean, there are so many. One of the reasons I asked the question is there are so many of these sort of workshops and things advertised where you see people posting those images, but they're nothing like what they normally post, and you think, you don't know how to do that. Unless you had the instructor by your side holding your hand, setting it up for you. There's no way that you could do that again.
Yeah.
When I can be a bit mean when I'm teaching sometimes, as I've told somebody on a previous podcast. I'll set up a shot and take it, and then as I'm sort of handing over to them, I'll fiddle with the power controls on the lights and I'll move them.
Yep. And I actually do exactly the same thing, Joe. So we'll do it together. I do exactly this. And then but I get them to work together in a team, or I'll deliberately trip them up, and I'll tell them, I'll be like, okay, right, now remember, you've got to go through your step by step process to get to how you want to. And then they'll be like, oh, but it looks too dark. I'm like, oh, is it? Oh, so what do you need to do? And they're like, and I turn it up, and they do it, and they're like, so why was it like that? I was like, because I turned it down. It's but I laugh with them and I joke with them. I'm like, look, I'm doing this. I'm purely doing this so that you know how to correct it, because then I know that you've understood it. I'm being a bit of a cow. I'm really sort of pushing you here, because I know that you can do it. You've proven to me at this stage that you can do it. I know you can do it, but I want to get you in the swing of, if this happened on set and you're there, and I need you to know what to do, so you don't get in a panic. So I'm being a bit of a sod, but it's quite fun at the same time.
It is kind of fun. There's a certain amount of enjoyment from it, but I think it's the best way for people to learn.
Exactly.
And if it can fulfill two things at once, one, your sadistic side, and two, their need to learn everything, then all so much the better.
Definitely. And I think the thing is as well is that I think, soon I might be doing something which is exactly that, which is a kind of more of a shoot day, which is to come along and have it. I'm not saying that people aren't welcome if they just want to come and take pictures. It's not that at all. It's it's what you call it, and and making sure it's clear for people on what they want to do, because some people they don't want to turn it into a business. They don't want to do anything. They want to just come and come and take some nice photos for themselves, for a hobby, and that is absolutely brilliant, and that's great. And I'd love it when we all have a fun day out together and we do that, and that's absolutely fine. But as you say, Joe, I think the only time that can turn a little bit dodgy is if they're then advertising their services as a photographer but don't have the means to be able to execute it, as you say. But if they want to just come for fun and take some pictures, and why not, then of course everybody's welcome. But I think maybe we would call that something like a shoot day rather than a workshop or something.
Yeah, a little bit of clarification of terms would be handy at times, I think, with some of those. Yeah. But you definitely don't want to put people off just having fun with it, because that's what photography is about.
Exactly.
But, you want to be able to differentiate where they're really going to learn from something where they're just, perhaps it's a social thing with cameras.
Yeah, absolutely. And each have their place for sure. So it's just about getting the right people into the right place for sure.
Yeah. So how can people keep up with your work and find out more about your workshops and tuition that you offer?
So most of the time, everything is advertised on my website, so that is there. Nobody can spell Couzens, which is fair enough because it's not normal spelling. So my website's just hcphotography.co.uk. But the main place to the day-to-day chaos, shenanigans and everything else that goes on is Instagram. My handle is at Hannah Couzens Photography. Then you've got to learn how to spell Cousins. But everything happens there. But it's a bit of fun there, because what I like to do with the stories where possible is I I take people with me on my day. And the good, the bad, the ugly. This is like in the car at 6 o'clock in the morning. I've got to drive for an hour to get to where I need to go. And then I show them the room that I'm shooting in, and I'll go through, if I get time as well, I'll sort of say to people, okay, I was going to shoot there, but not there because of that. And this is an interference, or, I'll sort of talk through the real life. And it's quite fun because I get some interesting and nice feedback. People say to me, oh, I thought that a photographer like you would have like all this space to work in. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm shoved in the corner of a boardroom somewhere. I'm lucky if I get a space to stick my head out the window to breathe for 5 minutes. It's not all the glamour that, people expect. And other days I turn up to offices and I'm like, I could work here or live here. This is amazing. So I show people the good and the bad and the ugly and all of that. And then, of course, for any workshops or anything else that we're doing, it all gets advertised on there as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. Really appreciated having you on, and it's been really interesting and good getting to know you.
Thanks, Joe. You too. I mean, it's really interesting to talk to you, and thank you so much for doing what you're doing. It's lovely to have things to listen to, and everyone's different perspectives on the industry. And I think, for all of us out there, we really appreciate you as well. So thanks ever so much, Joe.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This is the Focused Professional Podcast.